Hello, everyone. I'm Sophia.
And I'm Mihir, and you're listening to Climate Action Figures.
Well, hello there, and welcome to another episode of Climate Action Figures. My name is John Whidden, and this week on the show, you get to meet Sophia and Mihir. First, though, this week's Quick Fix. And today's Quick Fix comes from Callie in Cypress County, Alberta. Callie says, cultivate a compost practice. My husband and I are avid composters. He takes the coffee grounds and shredded paper from his work for our compost, and I collect scraps from my colleagues' lunches. LOL, she adds. So that's a great quick fix today. Welcome, Sophia and Mihir, to the show, and tell us what you think about that quick fix.
I think that this is a wonderful idea, taking food scraps and turning it into nutritional soil for plants or other uses.
I completely agree. I think composting is a great way to promote circular usage in your everyday life, and being conscious of knowing what materials to compost and what materials not to compost is very important while doing so.
I love that. We do our own compost here at our house, and we have been known to compost other people's food too. You know, when we go out for, supper at someone's house and there's a whole bunch of compost left over, they don't have a compost bin. Is it going too far to take their compost home with you?
I think that if you enjoy it, it's a great idea. And just a great way to keep things moving.
I agree. It's just more material to compost.
Yeah, that's what we figure. And clearly Callie and Mark out in Cypress County agree. We should even take other people's compost and put it in ours. I always figure, hey, why throw it in the landfill when it's, even if you're not going to use your compost at the end of the process, it just sits there and, turns into soil. And so why not do that? I'm very happy you're both here today. You're both involved with something called CRIN, Canadian Rockies Youth Network. Did I get that correct?
Yeah.
You did, yeah.
Great. And I'm going to ask you to take us into what that entails, that organization. And I think part of that explanation will come through the person who introduced us, who is Shauna, who works with Howl. And we should probably hear a little bit about Howl too. So can you wrap that all together and explain about CRIN through that connection with the Howl?
Yeah, I would love to. So the Canadian Rockies Youth Network, which started in 2019 out of an environmental and energy classroom. And the teacher who was in that eventually moved on to different things and started a program called the Howl Experience. Shauna was one of his past students and came to work for him as kind of their outreach coordinator. And so she was deeply engaged with a lot of their different programs, one of them being the Canadian Rockies Youth Network, which is where me and Mihir got in contact with Shauna. I don't know if you have anything else to add there, Mihir.
I think you explained it pretty well.
So Mihir, let me ask you, what got you interested in this? How did you first hear about CRIN, and why were you intrigued by that and led to join it?
So I was first introduced to CRIN by a fellow classmate in school last year, by which they presented a workshop CRIN was hosting to our leadership classroom. And after that, I just connected with them and got into CRIN. And it was very interesting, the work they were doing. And it really targeted all different aspects of environmental action, whether that be policy, youth action, Indigenous engagement, and also classroom and youth connectivity. So that is something I was really passionate about, and I'm very happy to be continuing with CRIN today.
Well, that sounds great. Sophia, what of all of those things that we just heard Mihir talk about, what is it that draws you most into CRIN?
I think the biggest draw for myself to the Canadian Rockies Youth Network has to be the leadership portion, and also just networking, getting to meet other people who are like-minded and have similar interests to yourselves, and how that almost creates a salon for a whole bunch of brilliant ideas that address the climate crisis.
So CRIN connects youth mainly. Am I correct in saying that?
Yes.
You would be, yes.
Okay. And how does that happen? Do you have meetings? Is it online? How does that go?
Yeah. So as Sophia mentioned, CRIN was founded up, and ever since we've been holding our annual Canadian Rockies Youth Summit. And this year, we've held pre-summits to the event. So we've basically connected to our satellite communities across Alberta and held different workshops and events specifically to the theme of water. The theme for this year is water and water conservation. So we really emphasize the community aspect. That is what builds CRIN. That is what builds networking and youth passion for such initiatives. So reaching out to our satellite communities and really garnering that support and emphasizing their involvement in such issues.
Okay. Youth Summit. That sounds really intriguing. Sophia, do you want to tell us about the Youth Summit and what that looked like? How many were involved? Where it happened?
Yeah. So last year was our first back into person summit, and it took place at the Biogeoscience Institute in Kananaskis. And it is a 4-day, 3-night event that has 30 to 50 youth or high school age students from across Alberta and British Columbia. Then they come together and, like Mihir was saying, they kind of take action on a common theme. So last year, the kind of tagline for the summit was Growing Impactful Voices. So the focus was on kind of that advocacy and youth leadership. And this year, we're tackling the issue of water conservation here in Alberta.
Oh, that sounds great. And how many, is it students only that are involved in CRIN?
CRIN is just, it's a student-led program, so it does tend to be just youth. But of course, it wouldn't be possible without the dedication of teachers and other support structures such as our sponsors.
Mihir, how many youth would be involved in CRIN in its entirety?
So CRIN is made up of the committee and its network members respectively. So Sophia and I, with about 8 other youth, make up the committee this year. And our last summit in 2023 brought together around 40 youth. So they're still involved with CRIN, and we're hoping to see them at this year's summit.
And if a student or a youth would like to get involved in CRIN, how would they do that?
A great way to get involved with CRIN would be either through our socials, so whether that be Instagram or Facebook. We also have a page on the We Are Changemakers website, which is in association with CPAWS. It's a great website that really promotes youth advocacy and is a good way to get in touch with the Canadian Rockies Youth Network.
Okay. And are most of the CRIN groups school-based groups, or are they more community-based groups? How does that work?
A lot of the groups with CRIN do happen to be through the school, but we do definitely have individuals from different communities come out independently.
We are going to move on to your climate action. And I think you might have chosen a climate action that has to do with the Canadian Rockies Youth Network. Is that right?
That is correct.
It is. My climate action with regards to the Canadian Rockies Youth Network, I hold the co-director chair. So I do a lot of reaching out to other organizations to try to establish a connection. I do a lot of emailing back and forth with committee members to see how I can best assist them with their work, and kind of just all over the map, trying to touch every aspect of what CRIN is, and especially a lot of time planning the 2024 summit.
Mihir, anything to add to that?
Yeah, so I assist CRIN through events and coordination. So that includes planning events alongside Sophia and other committee members, such as the Canadian Rockies Youth Summit, as well as coordinating with outreach and the outreach team and promoting our summit and events to youth across the province.
Oh, that sounds wonderful. So as you look forward to what you might do after high school, how do you see the Canadian Rockies Youth Network either being part of your life in a continuing way, or just informing or giving you some tools and training and connections that are useful in your future?
I think that the Canadian Rockies Youth Network, how it's kind of led my life is it's definitely opened my eyes to careers and pathways in environmental science. But it's also given me more personal tools, such as promoting my voice and just kind of expanding my knowledge about the local Alberta area.
Yeah, I definitely agree with what Sophia said. I think personally, the Canadian Rockies Youth Network has allowed me to develop different skills in different areas that I wouldn't have been able to do without the network. And personally, my goals after high school would be a career in international development or international relations. So the Canadian Rockies Youth Network really opened my eyes into grassroots collaboration, connecting with stakeholders, connecting with other youth, and building community in that aspect. So for global development, whether it be in your province, in your city, or international, the Canadian Rockies Youth Network has really provided me with those skills and those experiences to connect with other people.
Now, if there's a young person out there listening and they are thinking, this sounds really interesting to me, but I don't want to be the president or the chapter head, or, I don't have a ton of time to spend on this. Is there a place for that person in CRIN?
For sure. If people don't necessarily have the capacity to take on a committee role with CRIN, a wonderful place to be is a participant, where they can come out to the events that CRIN hosts. They get all the tools and all the knowledge that CRIN is trying to put out there, but they don't necessarily have to put in the time to plan and figure out the logistics around the events. They just get to attend. So I definitely think if there is someone out there who goes, this is something of interest, definitely come out to an event, whether that be one of our day events or whether that be the summit. It's really a great community and definitely worth your time.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, I think if you are interested in planning, there are some committee roles that are flexible in that sense. So you could be a participant or take on just a little more responsibility, but have that flexibility, because here we understand we're all students and we're very flexible in what we do. We just want that passion.
Well, that sounds great. And I should make it clear that CRIN did not approach me and pay to have this podcast put on. This is not an infomercial for CRIN. It just happens to be a great organization that you two are passionate about. And I'm really happy that you wanted to share that. Now, before we let you go, I need to ask, what gives you each hope these days? There's a lot going on in the world and it can seem a little bit dark. Mihir, do you want to start us off with what gives you hope?
Sure. I would say community and what we do together specifically as community. I want to emphasize that with the Canadian Rockies Youth Network, it really is the synergy formed between stakeholders and youth that support us, because we are obviously going into much more interconnected society, and that intergenerational support is really what backs us up and allows organizations like this to prosper and continue doing what they're doing. And through such community, diverse perspectives is what we want. The power of storytelling is obviously a very profound tool to tell different stories of different communities. And in this case, it's environmental action. Different factors go into what each community faces. And we really want to build that community and bring people together for those ideas. So I think continuing that sense and spirit of community is what really brings me hope.
Wow. Community, storytelling, intergenerational, wonderful concepts. How about you, Sophia?
I have to say something that gives me hope is just the amount of young people who are taking an interest in environmental conservation and really just the pathways that are opening up to those people who do have ideas around it. I think that we're going to have a super bright future if people just continue to come together with really open minds and are ready to take action on these large problems.
Super bright future indeed. I am confident about that, talking with you two today. So thank you so much for joining us on the program. And thank you, listener. We will be back next week, same time, same place, to hear from another climate action figure or two. Until then, go figures.
This has been Climate Action Figures, Our show is produced and hosted by John Whidden. Our creative consultant is Kayla McIntosh. Our theme song is Hawaii Vacation by Tovari. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at Climate Action Figures. That's all one word. And if you have any other questions or comments that arose from this or any episode, feel free to reach out to us at climateactionfigures@gmail.com. And thank you for listening. We'll be back next week with another Climate Action Figure.